Now the rest of our top stories, and the polls have opened as Colombia votes in the first round of the country's presidential election. In the capital, Bogota, the president, Juan Manuel Santos, cast his vote. This is the first election since he helped strike a peace deal with FARC rebels. If no candidate receives more than half of the vote, the top two candidates will go head-to-head in a rerun in June. Well, let's talk to the journalist and host of the Colombia Calling radio show, Richard McColl, who joins us now live from Bogota. Richard, welcome. 36 million Colombians, I think, are eligible to vote, but it's suggested that perhaps less than half of them are expected to do so. Why is that?
Well, thank you. Yes, 36 million are registered to vote, but there is always a great apathy in Colombia towards voting. There's so much of a feeling that nothing will change. The same old parties, the same establishment-run candidates will win. So you get this feeling of apathy, although today, reports so far, polls opened at 8 a.m., reports so far is a higher than usual number of voters are out in the streets. Of course, this is a very pivotal election in Colombia's short and fractured history. Perhaps people are motivated to vote today. Perhaps they're more emotionally charged. The issues of the peace deal with the FARC are on the table. The issues of corruption, the issue of Venezuela, and of course, international relations with Venezuela, and of course, keeping in line with Washington.
The polling seems to suggest that Colombians have stated that it's education, health, unemployment and inequality that are the major issues in deciding a new head of state. Peace agreements perhaps less important to voters. Would you go along with that?
It's an interesting concept. I think, of course, peace is always there at the fore of every Colombian's mind, but at the same time, many people in the regions and in the cities don't see how, or perhaps they don't see how this peace deal has affected them directly and benefited them directly. Of course, we're living the sort of best era in Colombia's history right now. But, this election is being manipulated by emotions on both sides, the polarization of the right and the left. Of course, on the one side, they're saying, well, if you vote for the leftist candidate who supports the peace deal, we're going to turn into Venezuela and the economy will be like that of Venezuela and Cuba. And then on the right-hand side, they're saying that the guerrillas have received complete impunity. So people are confused as to how, let's say, this peace deal at the moment maybe affects them directly. The big issues of education and health are being addressed by the central candidates more than anything else, by people who don't seem to be able to garner enough votes to get through to the second round. Those candidates would be Humberto de la Calle and Sergio Fajardo.
For the first time in the country's history, 4 women up for the vice president's position. I wonder if that's changed the nature of this campaign.
I really don't think that we could say that 4 women as vice presidential candidates has changed the nature of this campaign. Of course, it's a very positive move. Marta Lucia Ramirez, who of course is the vice presidential candidate for the Duque campaign. Duque is leading the polls over Petro by about 10 points. She was running for the presidency, as was Claudia Lopez, who is Sergio Fajardo's number, as was Clara Lopez, who is Gustavo Petro's deal. I still think there's a few years before we have a front-runner female presidential hopeful.
Richard, we'll talk to you when we get the results. For the moment, thank you very much indeed. Richard McColl, live for us in Bogota.